Get ready to have your socks knocked off on today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast because we are going through 6 shocking projections straight out of the 2024 Fantasy Football Fellas Draft Guide. Welcome in, Lucas and Tyler hanging out with you tonight. Tyler, we're cranking out the final work for our draft guide dropping this Saturday. What's your favorite thing about this year's draft guide? We've added a few new things. Obviously, the projections are going to be fire, but what is your favorite addition that we're adding this year?
It probably has to be, can I just say the whole, we're releasing like the baseline stuff right away, right? But then eventually as we get closer and closer to the season and training camp comes around, we start hearing news about coaches' preferences and which players are standing out and stuff like that. We're adding in tools to help you in your drafts, like upside and risk and so many other things. So I think it's all the additional stuff that we haven't had before and that we've really talked about here, but we are putting it now into the draft guide for the people to see just through the draft guide itself.
I think the favorite thing that we're upping our game on this year is the video archives that we're doing for each player. We are literally clipping every time we talk about a player, and it is going into an archive. So if you miss a piece of content, you can catch it in our draft guide all over again. And it can just be, if it's in a 60-second video, it might just be a 10-second clip of a player. And that's all you get. And that's just a digestible size for you to handle as you're coming through our draft guide. We're going to have so much coming out in that. But in today's episode, to hopefully highlight what you have in store, we are going to give you 6 of our shocking projections that I was looking at mine, Ty. I'm honestly shocked by my own projections and how the model came out after we have plugged in our baseline stats for this year. So without further ado, let's dive on into our 6 shocking projections. I knew you were going to laugh. I got him with it. I told Ty he was going to laugh. I said, oh, this is perfect. I got to get that Brock Purdy photo. For those of you who are listening to the audio version, this is a photo of Brock Purdy after, against the Seattle Seahawks in that was week 17 when he first started of 2022. And it's a photo of him super shocked. I just did it again and I realized the audio people couldn't hear it, but 6 shocking projections. What you're going to get from these right now, when we go through our draft guide, we plug in, we stat out every player, literally every player that we think is going to be a whiff of fantasy relevant. Like I'm statting out guys who have freaking 10 targets this year. I'm like, why am I even wasting my time on this?
Yeah, true.
But it's a part of the target distribution, right? We're trying to be as accurate as we possibly can. That being said, these 6, Ty and I each brought 3 of our own. We are relatively shocked by how these projections came out. And we don't know the other persons. I have no clue who Ty put down. I have no clue. He has no clue who I put down. So I'm going to quit babbling and you'll kind of understand the flow of this as we go. But Ty, give me your first shocking projection and I'll change the overlay here as soon as you tell me what your first projection is.
So funny thing is I forgot the order that I uploaded the overlays to. So I'm going to take a stab and hope that you click on the right one and that I'm talking about the right guy. But the first guy the first shocking projection that I have, at least as of May 29th, is that I have Jake Ferguson outscoring Trey McBride.
Oh gosh. Oh, what kind of a show are we running here? What?
Oh, we are running a factual show over here, and I'm just completely playing about that part, but I'm not playing about Jake Ferguson outscoring Trey McBride. And I think what this comes down to is 2 guys in fairly similar situations in that there is an alpha wide receiver one in there on their offense, right? Jake Ferguson has CeeDee Lamb. Trey McBride has Marvin Harrison Jr. now. They both have very good quarterback play. Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. What this comes down to for me, though, is the fact that Jake Ferguson has a year of this playing this number 2 pass catching option versus Trey McBride, who now has Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in, and there's going to be some I'll say some growing pains with that for Trey McBride, but just focusing on Jake Ferguson, why I've got Ferguson ahead of Trey McBride at this moment. Taking a look at 2023, Jake Ferguson in weeks 1 through 6, he was the tight end 16, averaging 7.7 fantasy points per week. Not super great, not like, anything worth investing in, to be completely honest. They go into their bye in week 7, and they come out then from week 8 until the end of the season. Jake Ferguson is the tight end 6 overall, averaging 12 fantasy points per game. That's a 4.5 point increase from before the bye week, which is pretty substantial for a tight end. Okay. And again, we take a look at Dallas going into 2024 now. Brandon Cooks is getting older. Okay. So if the threat of Brandon Cooks being the number 2 guy is still there, I'm expecting a little bit of a dip from Brandon Cooks just because he's getting older. We are, he's what, 30, 31, maybe 31 might be on the older side. He may be 30 to be completely honest, but
Pretty sure he's on the wrong side of 30.
I think that's the best way to say it.
30
So
on
you
the
take
nose.
that in consideration. And Dallas has no run game at this moment. It's Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. Like, there's a very clear path to Jake Ferguson being the number 2 pass catching option. And I think McBride has a pretty clear path as well, but I think it's been set in stone because we've seen it for a year with Jake Ferguson in Dallas, right? Ferguson was top 3 in routes run last year, so he's on the field a ton. He was first in red zone targets, which is a great stat for a tight end. And probably my favorite, he was 6th in yards after the catch while being 7th in receptions and 9th in targets. So it's not like it was an outlier of a yards after catch stat. It pretty much matched up with just the volume that he was getting. So it might be a little shocking to people. Maybe the other thing I can say too is I've got Jake Ferguson scoring 3 less points than Kyle Pitts, who seems to be a very popular candidate for people to really kind of break out.
So you're just super out on Trey McBride. That's this take.
No, it's not necessarily that I'm super out on Trey McBride. I just think that there are paths to volume for some other guys that Trey McBride won't have. He won't be at that rate as some people will have, like Jake Ferguson or Kyle Pitts. And look, I've got Sam Laporta still kind of statted out to finish wildly high for a tight end. I think it's just more so Jake Ferguson is going to be a very popular target in my drafts because we all know that he's going to go later than the Trey McBrides and the Kyle Pittses of the world, but he gives you honestly the same kind of upside as those guys.
So the 2 things I'm going to say about what you just said, one of them is as of right now. Like, I don't think we can emphasize in this episode as of right now, because these projections are going to evolve all the way through the offseason. This is an initial run through of we are plugging in target shares, we are plugging in targets, we are plugging in catch percentages, we are plugging in touchdowns. This is a basic dry run through. As training camp goes on, as we dig deeper and deeper into stats that we may not have had time to dig into this offseason. As the offseason progresses, these projections are going to change. They are not static. They are not stagnant. They are not final. So when Ty says at this moment, I have Jake Ferguson ahead of Trey McBride, you and me and the audience is going to say, Ty, that's blasphemous. Second thing I'm going to say. But again, this can evolve. This can change. This is not permanent. The second thing I will say is that I 100% agree with you that Jake Ferguson is going to be my number 1 tight end target in the later rounds of fantasy drafts this year, especially in redraft formats. I hate taking early tight end unless if I know I'm getting a good value on a Mark Andrews. I think Sam Laporta is going to be going way too high in this economy this year. Travis Kelce I might be interested in, but if I miss out on one of those top 3 guys, Jake Ferguson is 100% the route I'm going to go, because he's going to go after Kittle, he's going to go after Pitts, he's going to go after Kincaid, he's going to go after Kelce, Andrews, Laporta, McBride. Hands down, Jake Ferguson is going to be one of my favorite targets. So I share your love for Jake Ferguson. I just don't share it in the way of being ranked higher than Trey McBride. I do have Jake Ferguson statted out for 197 fantasy points, which I am very confident is going to put him. Where do I have him in comparison to George Kittle? That's the question. I need to ask myself. Oh, I did it. I don't. I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling it up. I lost. I clicked on the wrong tab to get to George Kittle. I have George
Oh
Kittle
boy.
statted out for less fantasy points than Jake Ferguson this year. I will tell you
I
that,
do.
and I will
I
leave it at
do as well. And you can check it out on our draft guide just to see how much lower I have George Kittle scoring than Jake Ferguson this year.
and same with me as well. That one honestly doesn't surprise me. So you and I both love Jake Ferguson. You just love him a little bit more than I do,
Well,
and that's okay.
So here's the other thing, though. You have Ferguson's projected for how many points? 197?
197.5, I think.
I've got Ferguson at 201.
So we're not far off on him at all.
We are not very far off. So you might just be higher on the top 6, maybe 4 to 6 guys than I
I
might
definitely
be.
am. Yeah. So in my projections, I have Ferguson about 25 points lower than Trey McBride.
Oh, okay.
I have McBride and Laporta pretty clearly at 1 and 2 right now. I shouldn't say pretty clearly, but like it's about it's going to be like a 10-point difference between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Sure.
So I'm really curious to see what you think about this guy, because my first shocking projection is that I have Alvin Kamara down for 255 fantasy points this year.
Oh,
You're going to
my
say
goodness.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Wow.
Okay? Yeah. I thought the same thing when I went in and saw that I had Alvin Kamara for 255 fantasy points. I said, there is no way this guy is going as the running back 17 on underdog drafts right now. There is no possible way that I have Alvin Kamara statted out this high. At the same time, though, I don't understand what's changing for Kamara going into this year. Now, maybe this is me, falling victim to Josh Jacobs of last year, right? Where I'm like, it's the same situation. What could possibly go wrong? That being said, Alvin Kamara is still very clearly the lead back in this offense. Like, I don't know what's changed, unless if Jamal Williams has come back from the dead. Shout out Jamal Williams.
Leader of the hidden village of the dead.
Leader of the hidden village of the dead. Not to make a Naruto reference, but look, unless if Jamal Williams comes back from the dead or Kendre Miller just has the offseason of a lifetime, like Alvin Kamara is still going to be the guy who gets the touches here in the backfield. Saints didn't add any other pass catchers either. Kamara is still likely second in line there. No disrespect to Rashid Shaheed, but if it's anything like we saw last year, Kamara is going to rack up plenty of targets. He's still averaging 5.6 targets per game over the last 3 years. And Kamara, he hasn't averaged more than 4 yards per carry during that stretch either. So it's not like he's been efficient on the ground. It's not like he's scoring a crap ton of rushing touchdowns. It's mostly been in the receiving game, and the volume is still there for him. So at worst, I'm thinking we get like, a 2022 Kamara, right? Where he was the running back 14 in fantasy points per game. So sure, it's not like an absolute boom, but if the floor is 2022, I just don't see what changes here. And like, here's what I have him down for. And you can tell me if this seems blasphemous in any way. 221 carries for 840 yards. That's barely 4 yards a carry. And 6 rushing touchdowns. Keep in mind, this is a full 17-game season, and Kamara has played 13, 15, and 13 games the last 3 years. Actually, I'm going to hold myself accountable on that one. I know it's 13, 15. I don't remember if the last one was
13.
It was 13, right? Do you have, I have here. I have
it was 13, 15, and 13.
Yep, 13, 15, 13. He hasn't played a full 17-game season. So I have him down for 221 carries, 840 yards, 6 touchdowns. In the receiving game, I have him down for 71 receptions, 525 yards, and 2 scores. Anything about that sound blasphemous to you? I have him for 91 targets, which might seem a little high, but considering he had 86 in 13 games last year, like I have him below that 5.5 mark in terms of targets.
You know what? Like, we are very, very similar. We are in the same ballpark when it comes to our stats for Kamara. The only difference for me is just the touchdowns. And
Sure.
I've got him down for 202 carries for 770 yards and 4 touchdowns. So it's not going to be a very efficient year on the ground, but he makes up for it with about 67 receptions on almost 90 targets. has 450 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. So again, like, it's not so much that like we are drastically different. We are very much in ballpark of each other with our stats for Kamara. I think a lot of people will see the fact that he's 28 years old. They see a Kendra Miller in the backfield and they think, oh, well, maybe they split some work. If they do, then this team is going to lose, because if you take Kamara off the field by that much and put Kendra Miller on the field, sorry, your offense isn't going to produce like at all.
And the thing with Alvin Kamara too, even on the touchdowns, 5 touchdowns last year in 13 games. He'd only have 2 the year prior, 4 in 13 games in 2021. This is rushing touchdowns, that is. I think he can get to 6. I think he can. Maybe that's just me putting too much faith in Clint Kubiak being able to shift gears and add a little bit of life to this offense. I just think Kamara can hit 6. It's one more than 5, and he's got 4 more games to do it this year. Right? If he scores 1 more touchdown in 4 games, we hit that mark. So nothing about this feels lofty to me, but when I saw 255.5, my socks literally blew off because I couldn't believe how high I had him, and ahead of a few other guys that we'll be talking about in this episode as well. But there we go. That is my first shocking projection. Why don't you have something you're going to add?
No.
Why don't we take a quick break? Take the break a little bit earlier this episode. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with 4 more shocking projections for the 2024 season. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. Left a little bit short of that time. We have gone through 2 of our shocking projections. Ty has Jake Ferguson ahead of Trey McBride as of right now, and I have Alvin Kamara scoring over 250 fantasy points this year. Ty, I'll kick it back to you. Who is your second shocking projection for the 2024 season?
So kind of in a similar vein as to you, where it's an aging big name fantasy player that still somehow, some way is just going to rack up a ton of fantasy points according to my projections. It's Cooper Kupp putting up 240 fantasy points on the season. And as things stand right now, I have him projected with a 24.2% target share in this Los Angeles offense. That's 143 targets based on how I've calculated the amount of pass attempts that they will throw. 91 receptions, little over 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I think the craziest thing for me is was last year the start of the decline for Cooper Kupp, or was last year just kind of a fluke because he's battling injuries and all that kind of stuff? And when I take a look at these, at how I statted out this Rams offense, I'm leaning towards last year was just kind of a fluke, and that he was just battling injuries and he's going to come back healthy. And now all this changes if, again, we get another training camp report that he's dealing with an injury and that he's going to miss, the first 4 weeks of the season, first 2 weeks of the season, right? Then he's going to fall quite a ways. But as things stand right now, like, I think a lot of people, they see Puka Nacua, and I don't want to take anything away from Puka. He's going to get his. He's going to be the lead target getter in this offense. But it's not like Cooper Kupp is just, all of a sudden just going to go away in this offense. And it really is like, there will be games where Puka gets like 12 targets. Cooper Kupp may get like 9 or 10. Like, this offense can support both of them. And just in their games last year when they played together, Cooper Kupp averaged 8 targets a game with 4 games with 10 or more with Puka Nacua. So it's certainly possible. And Cooper Kupp was on the field a ton. He was 7th in snap share, and he was 9th in red zone targets. So maybe, if anything, maybe the touchdowns are kind of his saving grace. And I'm not, and that's kind of a bold claim because touchdowns are not the most stickiest of stats. But with the rapport that Matt Stafford has with Cooper Kupp, it would not surprise me if we see Cooper Kupp finish with double-digit touchdowns just because of their history and how they've operated this offense. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I literally have them set it out for 7. So I would say the odds aren't great for that. But again, it wouldn't surprise me just because of this Rams offense, right? So I'm shockingly more in on Cooper Kupp than some of the other, young bloods, the youngins, you could say. Like I have Cooper Kupp's projected for more points.
Dog, we're 25 and 26.
Well, some of these guys are younger than us, and I've got Cooper Kupp
I see what
29.
I see what
No, but I've got Cooper Kupp projected for more points than Chris Olave.
Oh,
DJ Moore. But now, like, the difference is like 2 points. So they're in the same tier, right?
That's your hold on. We're not gonna go past. You have Cooper Kupp statted for more points than Chris Olave.
By like 2. By just 2 points.
I have them 25 points apart, with Chris Olave being higher.
Well, so are you just much more?
That's your shocking projection. No. I'm not far off from you on Cooper Kupp. Not to pick a fight, but so Cooper Kupp, how many targets do you have him down for? I have 129.
I have him for I lost my spot. 143.
Oh gosh. Okay, there's our difference right there. Because I have Cooper Kupp for 88 on 129 for just over 1,000 yards, about 11.7 per reception and 7 touchdowns. And I have him for 232 points. And I got Chris Olave all the way up. What is he at? 266? Is that where he's at for me? Yes, I have him at 267. He's just on the verge of 267. I have them about 35 points apart.
That is fascinating. How
low are you on Puka then? Let's go. Let's take this to Puka route then. Where are you at on Puka? Because to me, I think Puka is very clearly the 1. Kupp is very clearly the 2. Can both be supported? Absolutely. Cooper Kupp is. I like you listed off a couple of names. I'll throw back a couple. I have Terry McLaurin. I have him within a point of Malik Neighbors. Where is my DJ Moore? That's the one I'm curious on. Yeah, I have him only 4 points behind DJ Moore. So I am in the ballpark with you in terms of those guys. Chris Olave is our discrepancy here. Really, this is really the shocking projections that you have Chris Olave lower than 250 points. That shocks me.
So back to your Puka question. I've got him down for nearly 300 fantasy points. It's like a touchdown shy of 300.
I think I do as well. Where is he? I've got him at 293. That's where I have him.
I've got him at 294.
I've got him at 294. So we are in the same ballpark there. You're just that much more in on Cooper Kupp.
Just that much more in a Cooper Kupp, and I'm just not buying the hype with Chris Olave.
We'll fight this out another day. Well, no, we're gonna fight this out now. We're gonna fight this out now.
There it is. There it is.
We're so fight me on Chris Olave. Tell me why I shouldn't have Chris Olave down for 149 targets, 92 receptions, over 1,200 yards, 1,266 to be exact, and 8 touchdowns. Tell me what's so blasphemous about that.
Touchdowns.
Really? How many touchdowns do you have him scoring?
I have him down for 5.
Didn't he score 6 last year?
He
might
have.
He takes a step back of that? Oh, no, he scored 5. 4 and 5 his first 2 years in the league.
I think it's just more of an indictment on just this offense as a whole with Derek Carr as his quarterback than it is. I mean, and you take a look at Cooper Kupp, like, yes, Cooper Kupp is number 2 behind Puka, but he's got Matt Stafford with Sean McVay as his play caller. So maybe the best way to say it is like, or maybe I should ask it like this. Do you just have more faith in Clint Kubiak because you're in Kamara, you're in on Olave? I don't necessarily share that, and that's okay.
So here's why I share Trust me, when Clint Kubiak was the offense coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, I couldn't wait for him to get out of town. That being said, I hate being the guy who's like, well, he came from the Shanahan offense. But at the same time, when you look at the 49ers running pre-snap motion, the second highest rate in the NFL last year, and now the Saints who ran pre-snap motion at the second lowest rate last year, I think you got to get Chris Olave moving before the snap. If Clint Kubiak is going to bring anything from the 49ers, I pray that it's going to be pre-snap motion, because you can do so much more with Chris Olave as your stud wide receiver one if you get him moving along the line of scrimmage before the snap. You're going to create so many better looks for him. You're going to get him out in space more. You're going to give him better opportunities for Derek Carr to actually deliver the football to him. They seemed so out of sync last year. And why? Because they kept Chris Olave static before any of the snaps. They couldn't scheme him. They didn't want to scheme him open. So I understand Clint Kubiak. You and I probably share the same share the same. What's the word I'm looking for?
Well,
unfavoritism
Sure.
of Clint Kubiak. I just think they're going to get Chris Olave moving along the line of scrimmage more before the snap, giving him so many more open looks. We can debate the touchdowns. I get it. You know, if he's going to be at 6 or 7 instead of 8, sure, that brings him down, and all of a sudden, you know, he is looking more at the wide receiver 15, 16, 17 range for me versus being a top 12 option. But I have faith that, you know, in this third year, the third year wide receivers is the most likely year a wide receiver is to break out. And if it's not year 3, it decreases drastically afterwards. So in some ways I get it. In other ways, I'm just betting on the year 3 wide receiver.
And that's completely valid. Touchdowns are just the subjective part of projections. It's a matter of, do you think the team moves the ball down the field enough? Do they get into scoring positions? How often are they banking on these big play scoring opportunities? All that kind of stuff. That's just the subjective nature of projections.
So let's keep it moving. My second shocking projection. I have both Kenneth Walker and Josh Jacobs down for 229 fantasy points.
Oh, so, whoa, okay. I will let you talk about this one, because I can't wait to hear how you actually fledge this out and how you came to that. That is fascinating.
So I was statting these two guys out, and it really dawned on me how similar these two guys actually are in terms of their situations this year. You got 2 lead running backs in their offenses. Look at that. He's got a thumbs up. For those of you watching on YouTube, I don't know how you did that.
I don't know how I did that. On YouTube. Well, thanks, StreamYard. Appreciate it.
That was an approval on yes, they are similar. StreamYard listening. No. Look, they're both the lead backs in their offenses with 2 young, talented running backs waiting in the wings for their opportunity, right? You got Zach Charbonnet behind Ken Walker. You've now got Marshawn Lloyd behind Josh Jacobs. I think what we both know, though, is that these two are going to get majority of the rushing work in their offense, right? Looking at these guys, I only have them 1 carry apart per game in favor of Ken Walker. I've got Ken Walker at 264 carries, and I've got Josh Jacobs at 248.
Whoa, okay.
So you think that's good? You think so 264, it's right around, if I remember correctly, 14 and a half carries per game for Ken Walker. 15 and a half, per game for Ken Walker. I think he just gets majority of the rushing work. I think that's that. If we want to bring that down to 15, you know, I might bring that down, right? This is initial fletching it all out, figuring out how do I actually see this. These are subject to change. If, you know, Zach Charbonnet all of a sudden, you know, it's like coming out, yeah, we're getting more touches this year. It's going to be closer to a 50-50 split. Then of course I'm going to shift these projections, right? I'm not stupid, but as of right now, I only have them 1 carry per game apart. And I have Josh Jacobs seeing a target more per game. I have Josh Jacobs at 56 targets with Ken Walker at 41 targets, I believe. So at the end of the day, it comes down to touchdowns, right? Because if Josh Jacobs can turn Green Bay's misfortune around in the touchdown department, we're in business. But I think it's dependent on him being the bell cow and being a volume touchdown scorer for the Packers. And considering A.J. Dillon has been the only Green Bay Packer to score more than 5 rushing touchdowns the last 3 years, sorry, I'm not optimistic. I'm just not. All right. I have Josh Jacobs down for 7. I think that is a healthy number. I have him down for 2 receiving touchdowns as well. I think that is a healthy number. I just don't think these two are that far apart. I don't think Josh Jacobs has this massive revival incoming. And frankly, it makes sense why I haven't drafted a ton of Josh Jacobs so far, just because I don't see that much of a difference between him at going as the running back 10 on Underdog Fantasy right now and Ken Walker going as a running back 16. That gap just isn't big enough for me, and it makes sense now when I see it on the paper because I have them essentially literally fractions of fantasy points apart from one another.
Fascinating, honestly, because I think a lot of people will look at Ken Walker and they don't get excited about Ken Walker, but they look at Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay and they're like, oh, hey, now. And I mean, like, I'll be completely honest, like, that was my initial reaction to hearing Josh Jacobs signing with Green Bay in free agency.
Yeah.
But you explained it pretty well. Like, these are very similar backs in very similar situations where they will get the bulk and majority share of these carries. And I think it really just comes down to just the receiving work between these two. For me, like I as you were talking, I was like, holy cow, I've got them statted out like so similar to each other in terms of the rushing production. Like,
yep.
I've got Jacobs down for 230 carries, a little over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I've got
11. Wow. Okay, so that's where we're different on Jacobs then.
Mm-hmm. And then I've got Ken Walker for 228 carries. So you are way higher on his carries.
Way higher on that.
1,076 yards for Ken Walker and 10 touchdowns. So very similar.
I'm way too high on Ken Walker's carries. I don't know where I pulled 260. Holy smokes. Where did I pull that number from?
Yeah, I was going to say.
What math was I doing here?
Because I've got the Seattle Seahawks having 440 rushing attempts on the year. That's about 26 a game. Kenneth Walker, I did my stats in a way where I split the carries by like the backfield split. So I'm looking at Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and Geno Smith as like the 3 main guys that are going to be rushing the ball in this offense. And Ken Walker, I've got as a like getting 51.8% of this backfield. But with those rushing attempts, that means it's only 228 rushing attempts, right? So the big difference then, because I've got Jacobs projected higher than Ken Walker, is just that I think Josh Jacobs is just a little more involved in the receiving game. So if he's going to get, because I mean, I've literally got Jacobs having 12 more points, maybe 10? No, it's 6. Literally 6 more receptions than Ken Walker. And that's the difference, right? They are very similar. Josh Jacobs just offers a little more of a receiving upside. So I think that's why people might value him as well. It also might come down to people that think like Zach Charbonnet might be a thing in this offense, which I think is valid, but I just think Ken Walker is really going to dominate the majority share of these carries in this backfield.
So I'm literally going through and tweaking my rankings or my projections right now because that I don't know where in the world I pulled 264 from. I must have punched in a number wrong because going back,
246 or something.
Yeah, I must have meant 246, which is interesting though because my numbers still added up to the rush attempts per game I had them at. What I realized though is that the rush attempts per game is way too high. I had them running the ball like 26 times per game.
Well, no, here's the thing though. That's what I have.
So
and actually, now that I think about this, I give like a 5 to 10% buffer when it comes to the backfield split in terms of it's just so like, because you're going to have like a receiver that gets like 9 carries throughout the season and you're going to get, backup quarterbacks potentially and all those kind of things. So I gave a 10% buffer. So that's probably where it differs. If I didn't give that buffer, then the carries for Ken Walker would be way higher than what it is right now.
Yeah. So I have Ken Walker. I bumped him down to 250 carries. The Seahawks running the ball about 25.5 times per game. I have them down to 250 carries now. Puts them at about 223 fantasy points. So still only 6 points behind Josh Jacobs.
That's a
But
touchdown.
Right, it's a difference of a touchdown. That's exactly what this is. So if Josh Jacobs doesn't fall into the end zone once, or Ken Walker falls into the end zone an additional time, we're looking at the exact same player here. So I'm shocked how similarly I had these two. Maybe the one I should have had is that I still have Rachaad White higher than both of these two by shockingly as a significant amount, like 15 fantasy points. I have him ahead of both of these two. Maybe I'm crazy, but that is my second shocking projection. I love how we're hashing these out live too. People can be like, "This is such a long bit," but like, Ty, this is the fun of this. Is Ty and I have not revealed these to each other yet, and we're like processing these out in real time. We are making tweaks for you in real time before the draft guide comes out. So we're always going to be refining this thing for you all. When it drops this Saturday, you will be able to find that in the link on our profile. We'll have it in the link in the description of literally every single video we post from Saturday on as well. So make sure you get your hands on that because we will be updating it all off season long. Ty, let's move on to our final shocking projections though. What is your third shocking projection for 2024?
Oh man, this is another one of these like Cooper Kupp scoring more than Chris Olave ones.
Oh no.
I've got DK Metcalf scoring more than Marvin Harrison.
Oh no.
another Lucas falling out of his chair moment. Oh, I knew this was gonna be like, if my first two were jabs, the first two were jabs, this was 1000% like the haymaker. Yeah. I am way in on DK Metcalf, and I'm kind of scared how much I am in on DK Metcalf.
Oh no.
Where do I even start? I'm still trying to process the fact that like
this
it
is
really
subject to
threw you
change.
out of your chair.
This is subject to change. I will just people are gonna cancel us. They're gonna say these guys are blasphemous. These are subject to change. We're gonna go back and tweak all these, but oh my goodness. Talk about a hot take.
And I will say, like, I have DK just scoring 3 more points than Marvin Harrison Jr. So it's not that I don't think that Marvin Harrison Jr. won't be like a stud in fantasy or anything like that. It's just that I take a look at DK Metcalf and the Seattle passing offense with Ryan Grubb coming in, and I think, I've expressed my concerns about a college offensive coordinator coming into the NFL.
Yep.
But when I take a look at just how Washington, at least looking at the receivers between Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan, there was a clear one in that offense.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be Tyler Lockett.
What? Really?
Yeah, was shocker of a take on that one. Why didn't you fall out of your chair on that one? I don't think it's going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba because I think he is still going to be he's not going to be like slot exclusive or anything like that, but he's going to take the majority of his snaps from the slot. That leaves DK Metcalf. And I don't want that to be the only argument for DK Metcalf, but we know that DK is the big play downfield threat that is always going to score touchdowns because of just his size and freak ability in the red zone, right? I think the Seattle offensive line will be better this year. Geno will have time to throw the ball, and that was the major difference last year in Geno's first year as a starter. Geno had time to throw his first year, and his offensive line actually it held up for a little while. Last year it didn't, and I think we saw a lot of inconsistencies with these Seattle wide receivers because of that. I think this Seattle offense rebounds a little bit. I think this new offense coming in from Grubb, as much as I question, again, it's a college play caller coming into the NFL. This is a much more pass-friendly offense than what it was with Shane Waldron and Pete Carroll, right? So these are all subject to change. Maybe, I take away a touchdown or two from DK Metcalf, or I adjust his yards per reception. But I'm very in on DK Metcalf this year, and I can't tell if I'm scared or if I like it.
I'm terrified. I might call a therapist for you. Uh,
BetterHelp sponsor.
BetterHelp sponsor Talk Therapy. Not a sponsor, but would love to have as a sponsor. Let's diagnose how we got here though, because I'm looking at my Marvin Harrison Jr. and DK Metcalf stats side by side. I very clearly have a one. Now, I have this Seattle Seahawks wide receiver room a lot more murky than you do. So actually, before we even get to the Marv bit, where do you have what's the pecking order of the Seattle wide receiver room for you?
It goes DK, JSN, and then Tyler Lockett.
Okay, you do have Tyler Lockett third.
The biggest difference is just the yards in the yards per reception. Like I've got DK.
Give me their targets though. I'm curious about their targets because this is what I'm recognizing for me. It comes down to I have their targets bunched so close together. I'm going to have to disperse them out more. And I think DK is going to be a big riser for me when I disperse more of those targets to him. But like I'm looking at mine as of right now, I got DK with 129 targets, Lockett at 118, and JSN at 115. Because I do think this team is going to throw the ball more under Ryan Grubb.
Yep.
But I'm wondering if I have them too close together and if I need to distribute them a little bit more and actually probably put some more respect on JSN, but that's a different conversation. So give me their target distributions then.
I've got DK at 134. I've got Lockett at 120, and I've got JSN at 114.
Okay, so we're not far apart there. You have more total targets than I do, which honestly, again, I can disperse a few off of Jake Bobo and Noah Fant and Farrell Brown, Ken Walker if I need to. Like I have room to play with there, obviously, but fascinating. Okay, so yes, obviously the yards per reception. Then how many touchdowns do you have DK scoring?
I got him for 8.
Okay, I have him at 7. So this is fascinating. So okay, so this is a Marv. This is a Marv bit then. All right. So where's Marv then? Give me your line for Marv because something tells me you're gonna have him for less targets than DK Metcalf.
Funny you say that because I've got him down for 2 more targets than DK. I've got him for 136 targets.
Okay.
85 receptions. Pretty much a full yard and a half less in yards per reception for Marv.
Give me those numbers.
So DK's yards per reception was 14.6. Yep. Marv's is 13.1.
Okay. I'm at 14.2 and 13.2 respectively.
So Marv then is a little over 1,100 yards. DK is a little closer to 1,200 yards. They both have 8 touchdowns. So like I said, there's a 3-point difference between these guys. There's not much that separates them. And again, it's not that I'm saying that like Marvin Harrison is not worth investing in or that he's going to be overpriced. Like his price point in drafts will be good. I shouldn't say it's going to be good value, but it's going to be fair value. I just think you're going to find a better value at DK Metcalf, who's going to probably be going a round and a half later than him.
This is just fascinating. Because so when I started out Marv, I was shocked. I was lower on him than I anticipated. Right, he's going as a top 10 wide receiver in best ball right now. I'm gonna cool off on Marv quite a bit. I think because originally I was drafting him pretty early and often. Yep. Mostly because I want to take the shot on the high upside rookie wide receiver, one of the best prospects we've seen since Julio Jones, Jamar Chase. I have him down for where is he? 261 fantasy points. Like I have him down for less than I do Chris Olave, right? And again, Chris Olave is one I'm recognizing I might need to cool down on a bit. But like I have Drake London ahead of him. Obviously, I have Garrett Wilson ahead of him. I have Garrett Wilson ahead of him by 20 fantasy points. So I think I'm going to end up cooling down on Marv quite a bit when it comes to drafting. That being said, you should totally invest in Marv, as a top 15 wide receiver. But when it comes to wide receiver 9, I think I'm going to start cooling off quite a bit. Clearly, you are because my gosh, that is so that is quite the take there of having DK Metcalf handful of points ahead of Marv.
So again, we talked about Cooper Kupp earlier and Chris Olave, right? Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, DJ Moore, and Marvin Harrison Jr. are all separated by a total of 4 fantasy points in my projections right now. Like they are all in the same tier. They are not going to be bad picks. But come draft time, I am, it'll be interesting to see how drafts play out, because again, you see Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf are in that tier, but they will be going much later than the Chris Olaves and DJ Moores and Marvin Harrisons of the world.
I'm going to wrap us out with
A
another
little less of a hot take.
little less of a hot take, but I promise you it's going to get the people going. It's a provocative one. I promise you that. You ready for this? Got Jared Goff statted out for more fantasy points than Brock Purdy, baby.
Dude, yes. Let's
Down
go.
with Brock Purdy.
I see now why you use Brock Purdy as the photo in the transition at the beginning of the episode.
This has come full circle. I originally was number one public enemy for Brock Purdy stands. I came around on him last year and said, you know what? He might actually not be that bad of a fantasy asset. I kind of like Brock Purdy. It's come full circle. Down with Brock Purdy. Not in that regard. This is far more about Jared Goff than it is Brock Purdy for me. I have Jared Goff statted out. Give me 2 seconds here. I believe it's like the difference of a touchdown between the two. I have Jared Goff at 282 and I have Brock Purdy at 276. Yes, 276. So they're not far off. It is the difference of a touchdown. That being said, Jared Goff this year, 14 of his 17 games are being played indoors, inside of domes. Let me read you some stats here. Jared Goff in 2023, 11 of his 17 games were played in domes, threw for nearly 3,000 yards, threw 23 out of his 30 touchdowns in indoor games. He had a 104 passer rating. If we're going to put that in terms of season long, that you look at season long guys in full 17 games, a good passer rating is right around somewhere between 105, 110. So Goff is on the cusp of like top tier passer rating in the NFL in dome games. In 2022, again, 11 of 17, 66 completion percentage. She also had a 69 percent completion percentage in 2023. Threw for 2,977 yards. Threw for 4 yards less. He threw 24 of his 29 touchdowns in dome games, and he had a 103.7 passer rating. Their first 7 games are all played in domes this year. So you are giving me upper echelon Jared Goff in dome games. And I understand every quarterback's stats are inflated in indoor games because you don't have conditions to deal with. I get it. Of course they're going to be better. But this is notable for me. This is absolutely notable, especially when you look at Goff in outdoor games then over the last 2 years in 12 of those games, averaging just over 1,500 yards in a season, 6 touchdowns. That's 1 touchdown per game, a 63.6 completion percentage. Goff is significantly worse outdoors than he is at home. Than in domes, excuse me. I think a 4 field, indoors, home game, but 14 of 17 are played in domes this year. I am 1,000% factoring that into my rankings. So Jared Goff is sneaky going to be one of those guys where, if I swing and miss, if I get way too patient on quarterback in my redraft leagues this year and I got to escape with somebody, it might be Jared Goff, honestly, when his first 7 games are being played indoors.
I am trying to have Jared Goff be. I want the highest exposure possible on Jared Goff, not just because of the dome games and all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, I just want to say this: the first outdoor game is in Week 9 against Green Bay. That's in November, so like it's not even like winter at that point. His next
Cold,
one is,
but
you're right. His next one is week 16 against Chicago.
get an insane
Okay.
stretch. You get a couple insane stretches of outdoor games.
Yep. And
Or
then week
indoor games,
17.
sorry.
Yeah, week 17. That's the third outdoor game. Guess where that's at?
Yeah, San Francisco.
San Francisco. Like it's a cheat code. It's a cheat code. Look, Jared Goff, he has got to be your late round quarterback option if you strike out on really any of the top 6 or top 7. And I think
I would go as far. I would go top 10, top 12.
sure.
But like,
Because
if you're in a 12-man league, and I have it happens to me every year where I get patient. I wait for who's going around 12 right now that I could think of. Like a Jaden Daniels, right? A Caleb Williams. I'm like, I'll settle for one of those high upside rookies. Boom, boom, both gone.
Yep.
Jared Goff is going to be next guy on my list after those two.
And honestly, like, I don't think it's that bad of a strategy to take one of those rookie quarterbacks and then take Jared Goff and have them like as a tandem on your fantasy team. And like, I think a lot of people would be like, well, you don't need 2 quarterbacks on your team. Like, literally the third guy on our podcast is very much just like, don't take one. You don't need 2 quarterbacks. But with the uncertainty of a rookie quarterback, you make up for it with a guy like Jared Goff that can probably, he can give you 25 or even more.
Especially at home in Ford Field.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Book it. Start of the week.
Yep. So
well, give me where are all of Jared Goff's home games this year? I'm going to put him down as a start of the week. Make sure I get him in there.
Rams, Bucks, Seahawks, Titans, Jaguars, Bears, Packers, Bills, Vikings.
Oh, starts of the week and all of them. I love the sound of those. All of them starts of the week. Maybe except the Green Bay one, but Ford Field still at home. Start Jared Goff.
Yeah, I've got, so the only thing that I can really like ask or question is just, I've got Jared Goff set it for 296 fantasy points. I've got Brock Purdy set it for like 290.
Ooh.
And I think part of it,
I
think part of it is just that, like, I've got them projected for a ton of passing yards, and they both are going to be pushing like 30 passing touchdowns.
Yep.
So I wonder if that's where the big difference is. It's just either in the passing yards or the touchdowns. But look, it's not that like pocket passing quarterbacks like Brock Purdy or like Jared Goff, like Kirk Cousins, like Matt Stafford can't push 300 points. That's just their ceiling, right? So maybe the better way to say it is like, I've got Goff closer to his ceiling, but I think like I would argue that his ceiling is more likely than not in compared to previous years, just because of how the schedule plays out and where this offense is with Ben Johnson and the weapons that they have.
So I've got Jared Goff for 29 touchdowns to Brock Purdy's 26. I think Brock Purdy takes a step back in that department this year. I think the overall efficiency of this 49ers offense comes down this year. They're still going to be debatably the most efficient offense in the NFL. I just don't think we see conversion at the same rate as we did last year, which was absolutely insane at times. I just don't think we're going to get that. I don't think we're going to strike gold 2 years in a row there. Well, he'll be just fine. He'll be a viable option, but I just don't think we can go and it's like, well, what changed? Right? I don't think the same thing applies for Alvin Kamara in this scenario, right? I just don't think we can automatically go in with that. There's regression coming, right? I factored in a bit of regression into Kamara's stats, yet he still came out that high for me. But when it comes to Brock Purdy, I just don't think he's going to return the elite level efficiency that he was at last year.
Yeah, we're not going to see 60 total team touchdowns. We're not going to see 33 passing touchdowns.
No, 33 passing touchdowns is the number there for me. We are not going to see that again next year. I will promise you that. I think that wraps it up, Ty. Anything you want to add before we sign it off here?
Look, I guess I will say this to kind of save face a little bit. When I have guys like DK Metcalf and Cooper Kupp projected for more or similar points to the Marvin Harrisons of the world, I'm not saying that those guys are bad players or going to be bad picks. It's just that I think the guys going later than them are just more valuable than they are. It both can be true. One guy can be good and the other guy can be even better value and still be good.
And these are all subject to change. These are not final. These are not official takes for the 2024 season, right?
Cams are final. Actually, he can't. He can't.
He's not allowed to change.
He's not
here. He's not here, so he's not allowed to change anything. No, these are not final. So when Ty says, "Oh, I got DK Metcalf 3 points ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr.," I would be willing to bet by the time the season starts, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be ahead of DK Metcalf in his projections.
Bet on what? A Caniac?
You're serious. You're serious.
I mean, we're going to put something on
I'll
the
put
line.
a Caniac on this. You just want a reason to go to Canes.
I know, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Maybe that's what I'll get for dinner instead of Leon Chin. Not sponsors, by the way. Maybe that's.
But hey, you know what?
I don't know if I can Uber Eats that though. Not a sponsor either. Man, somebody name dropping all these companies on here. Well, it's time to sign it off. Draft Guide. It is coming out this Saturday. You are watching this video on Thursday, probably at some point. Maybe you're watching this on Friday. But June 1st, the Fantasy Football Fellas 2024 Draft Guide is dropping. Full projections on quite literally more players than you care about in our draft guide. We are going to add risk and upside meters in the coming weeks. We are adding a personal tailored list of all of our breakout, bust, and sleeper candidates at each position. We are adding video archives. Whenever we upload a video about a player, it is going straight to a player's archive. You're going to have access to all of that for $10. That is it. $10. If you sign up with the code FELLAS on Underdog after June 1st, enter any of their contests, we'll give it to you for absolutely free. 100% free. All you have to do is sign up with our code, enter any of their contests. You could be a pick'em entry for $2 you wager, $5 you wager. That's half price. You get it for free. That's all you have to do. So sign up with the code FELLAS and Underdog if you want it, or you can pay $10 for it at fellasdraftguide.com. I believe that is the hyperlink. Otherwise, it will be down in the description of any videos you watch after this as well. We're getting really deep into the fantasy content now the rest of the season. You'll be seeing us 4 times a week, 2 podcasts, 2 YouTube videos. We got our first redraft mock draft of the offseason coming Monday. We're working on a guest for Thursday's episode next week as well that you're not going to want to miss. Cameron should hopefully be back, or maybe I shouldn't be hoping for that because this is kind of fun when Ty and I just get to do our thing on here and we don't have to worry about Cameron coming in and screwing everything up and giving his own terrible projections too that you're just going to want to ignore in our draft guide.
We'll just send him well wishes as he watches his ceiling and walls dry with paint. So
you know what? I really should stop giving him crap in these episodes because he was incredibly gracious to me. I was waiting for that to be the first thing on when y'all recorded last week, and it wasn't. And I said, you know what? I should really like the guy.
It was me that gave you the shot, and you might have missed it.
I think I did. At any rate, thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. We will be back next week. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. Buy the draft guide on Saturday. I'll talk to y'all soon. Deuces.